Hi guys, welcome back to Lost in My Library. My name's Kate. Today I am doing another video through the journey of going through the Five Nights at Freddy's Fazbear Frights. I was about to say Tales from the Pizzaplex. That's the wrong series. Five Fazbear Frights series. We are on 1:35 a.m. I have previously done Into the Pit and Fetch. We are now at 1:35 a.m. If you are new to this series, the Fazbear Frights books series are a collection of short stories set in the Five Nights at Freddy's universe. In these videos, I talk about the stories each because, of course, this is a game series and not many people actually read the books. And my job is, as somebody who loves the Five Nights at Freddy's series, who also loves reading, is breaking down the books, breaking down what the connections are to the games and the greater scheme of the book series, other books, and also the implications. I will say this. I have only read up to this third book. I haven't read past this. So if there is more connections to later books, I will mention them when I get to the later books. But I have no idea. Other than I know Eleanor plays a much bigger role later on in the epilogue, and I think there's another short story with Eleanor. We talked about Eleanor in the first book, Into the Pit. And yeah, I know that, but that's all I know about connections. So let's get on to the first book short story, which is the titular story, 1:35 a.m. So we follow our main character, Delilah. Delilah is living by herself in an apartment. She has recently gone through a divorce and she works for a cafe. She has the issue of not being able to wake up on time to go to work. And one day after work, she goes to a yard sale because she loves going to yard sales, and she finds an Ella doll. And these Ella dolls were created back in the 80s. This is the 2000s, and I'm going to assume probably the early 2000s, based off of she doesn't use, her first thought's not cell phone use alarm clock, but it's use an actual physical alarm clock. So I'm going to assume probably early 2000s on this one. And this doll used to do, wild things that you don't fully understand, what? It could serve people, it could talk, it could have conversations, it was an alarm clock. It advertised that it did a lot of things. But by the time that we get to the Ella doll in our story, it's just an alarm clock. And that's okay. It's just an alarm clock. So she buys the alarm clock because she needs it. She goes home that day and she's like, okay, I have to work it later. I'm going to set this clock at 1:35 p.m. I'm going to take a nap. And we'll begin. She later then wakes up from a nap from a call from her boss. And he's wondering where she's at because she is running late. And she is like, this thing doesn't work. I'm just going to throw it out. So she throws it away and goes to work. Comes back, goes to sleep that night, and wakes up at 1:35 a.m. to an alarm sound. And she realizes, oh, I set it for 1:35 a.m., not 1:35 p.m. when I was wanting to set it. And she's like, I'm going to go back and I'm going to go get it. So she goes out to the dumpster the next day, and she can't find the Ella doll. And she's like, oh man, somebody's taken it. Oh well, whatever. Goes to work, comes back home, and she's woken up again at 1:35 a.m. And she hears tapping on her window. And she is like, that's really weird, but goes back to sleep. Again, this goes on for a while. This waking up at 1:35 a.m. It escalates to a point where she's hearing footsteps in her apartment. She wakes up at one point so freaked out, grabs a flashlight, turns the light on, expecting to find the Ella doll. Does not find the Ella doll. She's freaked out. So she goes to her boss and is like, hey, can I take the graveyard shift? Because she just can't be at home. She thinks being in a public place would fix the problems. Actually, it doesn't. Fun fact, it doesn't. And she sees Ella at her work. And this causes such a rift and causes a lot of problems for her coworkers, her boss, the customers, that she is fired. Because she freaks out every single time 1:35 a.m. hits, and she sees Ella. So she's fired. She goes to her friend Harper's place, and her friend Harper knows about Ella, but Delilah ends up accusing Harper of taking the doll and doing all of this to her. Harper eventually kicks Delilah out, and Delilah ends up at a motel, but again, nothing changes. Ella shows up again. She decides one night to drive at 1:35 a.m. Ella can't possibly touch her there, right? No. She hears Ella again at 1:35 a.m. She stops at a construction site where she finds a vent to hide in. She gets stuck, and eventually she suffocates based off of what it says at the end. And that's the end of 1:35 a.m. Connections based off of the doll on the front of the book and the very coincidental name Ella. Ella has to be connected to Eleanor, and thus Baby, because she does look like Baby. I was watching Matt Pat talk about the books, kind of, and he says he gets a lot of flack for saying that Eleanor is Baby, and I'm just like, no, I agree with that. So come at me, if you will, about Eleanor and Baby being two separate things, but they're not. They're the same thing. It's just Eleanor is the book's version of Baby. So, there you go. Maybe Eleanor / Ella is the name given to Baby for the doll forms of Baby. Other than that, there's really no connections. There really hasn't been a connection to the games since we had Into the Pit, which was very, very, very connected. I really enjoyed that story. In situations, more animatronics on the loose, but this could also be showing anything Baby related is always bound to be evil / under the influence of William. Could be. Okay, next one is called Room for One More. This story follows our main character, Stanley, who is starting a new job after a massive breakup. What was weird was that the interviewer who hired him on the spot because they needed the job filled after the last guard had a heart attack. On his first night, he finds a little ballerina doll, and who speaks to him. He kind of finds it cute. It's a cute little doll, and falls asleep because it's a night guard position and nothing's happening where he's at. When he wakes up, the doll's gone. And he finds it weird, but whatever. And then this keeps happening night after night. And different body parts start to swell. To the point he goes to the doctor and is like, hey, like, things are swelling in, like, his belly. He gets chubbier. And his arms get, like, swollen. His legs get swollen. And he goes to the doctor, and the doctor's like, I don't know what's going on with you. Here's the medicine. Come see me in a week. See if you're feeling any kind of better. On one final night, he falls asleep and wakes up to one of the dolls crawling into his mouth. He tries to fight it off, but the doll gets in, and that's the end of the story. Connections, the ballerina dolls are obviously the mini arenas. This also could be how Ennard took over Michael in FNAF's sister location. That's a thought. Implications could show how animatronics could become human differently than how Eleanor did it. And there could be more out there. Like Ennard and Michael. Interesting to think about. The last story is called The New Kid. This story follows our main character Devin and his best friend Mick. Devin is a jerk. He says inappropriate things to his crush Heather. That's just awful. And he thinks it's flirting. It's not. It's bad. It's really bad. He's just being a terrible human being. He's the epitome of nice guy. After school one day, he meets up with his friend Mick, and they find out they can't hang out at their normal spot. And so they're going to have to find a new hangout spot. The next day, they meet their new kid, Kelsey. Kelsey becomes friends with the two, but Devin is definitely very jealous of Kelsey. Kelsey fits in perfectly with him and Mick, becomes friends with Heather. One day, they decide to hang out together, but Heather comes and splits up the group between her and Devin, and her and Kelsey, Devin and Mick. Basically, what happens is they go to a house. They get some neighbor drives them there, and he's like, "I'll come back and I'll come pick you up." Well, Devin's like, "No, I'm gonna leave. Screw this," and leaves. And Mick goes with him, and they go back around. They leave. Kelsey had told Devin about urban exploring, so this leads to Devin discovering an old abandoned pizzeria. What's new? Apparently there's a lot in this world. Him, Mick, and Kelsey go there one day after school, and Devin gets Kelsey to get into the Springtrap suit. Okay. The locks crush Kelsey and the suit, and this is when Devin tells Mick that he knew the locks would do that. He knew that the suit would do that. And yet he still got Kelsey to get into the suit. If you didn't think Devin was awful before, he's awful now. He's committed murder, basically. He tells Mick, Devin and Mick leave, but Devin decides to go back. And Devin tells Mick to tell everyone that Devin wasn't feeling well, and that's why he wasn't at school. So Devin goes back to the pizzeria, but Kelsey's body wasn't in the suit. And Devin tried to take off the head of the suit. This ended up in Devin sticking his arm into the mouth of the bear, because this is Golden Freddy, Fazbear, and the bear's mouth closes on his arm. He looks into the suit again, and this time he sees black curly hair. And this was not Kelsey's blonde hair. He was sucked into the suit, and in the next scene, we see Mick keep his promise to say Devin wasn't feeling well, and then at the very end, we see Kelsey again at a new school, meeting new people. So, connections. The spring lock suit is never reliable, and we are seeing that again. The black curly hair could have connections to who's inhabiting Golden Freddy. Implications: showing ghosts. Showing that ghosts can be very, very, very real. Can have physical bodies and seem very real to everybody around them. Maybe, maybe not. So, this moves on to, if you did not know this, there is a epilogue at the very end of every book. They connect to each other, and eventually we'll have a whole entire story from the epilogue. And it's been following this creature called the Stitch Wraith. It looks like, if you've seen pictures of it, it looks like Ennard. So that's what it is. So in this epilogue, Detective Larson is sitting at his desk thinking about Ryan, and then he's told that the Stitch Wraith has been spotted again. We then move to focus on Phineas. Phineas is a scientist. One room that Phineas has is a room of haunted items. He's studying how one's emotion impacts their environment. He finds that agony radiates further than any other emotion. And that's why he has a lot of torture haunted items in his room, and because it gives more power, basically. And he believes that flowers are nature's purest vessel for emotion. He then gets a delivery from a man named Flynn. Phineas opens the package and there's an endoskeleton in it. He goes to get lunch and talks about flowers with a food truck owner. He goes back in to find the skeleton to find it ready. He then goes back to the room with the haunted items and gives it a body using the items in the room. So I'm going to read the description of what's happening. So let's see. Okay. Okay. So Phineas hurried into the protective room. He knew exactly what he needed, so it only took a few minutes to place the items in separate boxes and return to the lab. There, he put the boxes on the table next to the bare endoskeleton. Running his hand over the metal skeleton, he reveled in the electric energy dancing at his fingertips. First, a head, he whispered. Reaching into the first box he'd set on the table, Phineas pulled out a 3-foot-tall white doll covered in drawings done in colored markers. The doll was truly an abomination of decorative overkill. It had rainbow fingertips, green knees, brown smudges on its body and legs, and various bibs and bobs glued to it, one of which appeared to be a smiley face eraser. Interested in the doll's body, Phineas grabbed the doll's flat, black marker-drawn face and pulled it from the doll's neck. He then affixated the head to the top of the endoskeleton. "That's better," he said. Give you some personality." He reaches into the second box, and now for some heart. The item in the second box was an animatronic dog that clearly no longer functioned. Phineas set his shoulders and prepared himself to touch it. The dog was an ugly dog, as ugly as Phineas himself. What with its matted, grayish-brown fur, triangle-shaped head, and wide mouth full of sharp teeth. But it wasn't just ugly. It was wrong somehow. Of all the items in Phineas's collection, he found that this dog to be the most menacing. He sensed the dog had been responsible for some powerful agony. He'd never been entirely comfortable having it around, but now he was going to take it apart so it wouldn't be a threat. Using sharp shears, Phineas tore into the dog's fur. Then he used pliers to pull out wires and circuitry. In minutes, he'd revealed the dog's battery pack, located in the dog's chest, where its heart would have been had it been a living dog. Lifting the large plastic-encased unit, trailing a tangle of entwined wires, Phineas studied the endoskeleton to install it. Phineas dismissed plugins in the endoskeleton's head and neck, and instead found a suitable port in the endoskeleton's chest. He grinned when he looked at it. "Ha! There, now my Tin Hat Man has a heart." He chuckled. The moment the endoskeleton got its heart, it became more than an endoskeleton. It became an animatronic being of great energy, and it moved. And that's it. That's the description. So we got a description of what is probably Endo's face and how probably Endo came to be. And the dog's mentioned. If we are to infer it correctly, it is the same dog that we saw in the story Fetch. So it's slowly starting to connect some things, but that is it. We go back to the food truck driver who goes into the facility to find Phineas dead. We get a third-party view of the facility to see the endoskeleton, grab a cloak, and leave. And that is the end of the epilogue. Oh, so good. I think this is still the second set. This Fetch is probably still my favorite. But this was pretty good. My favorite of the three, if I was to give a favorite, I think my favorite would be the New Kid story. That's pretty freaky, not gonna lie. But we are moving on to number 4, which I'm not sure what number 4 is. But we are moving on to number 4, and it took me a long time to get this out. I apologize, but it's out. So, yay. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did, leave a like, comment, subscribe, do all the YouTube things. Go be a good cabbage today. Do something kind for someone, even if that is for yourself, because self-care is important. And I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.